Have you ever wondered, why is it that we all have the same brain, yet some people learn faster, live deeper, and heal their wounds, while others remain stuck in anxiety and old habits? Today, you and I will walk through a journey like no other. A place where modern neuroscience meets the timeless wisdom of Buddhism. Each part of this video will not only help you understand the depths of your own brain, but also illuminate a path of awakening, healing, and learning that is uniquely yours. If you enjoy content that is profound, healing, and full of inspiration, feel free to subscribe to the channel, so you won't miss the next gifts born from the wisdom within you. Take a deep breath. And let's begin. The brain is the soil of the mind. Every action plants a seed. Mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief, they are all mind-wrought. If with an impure mind one speaks or acts, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox. The Dhammapada, verse 1. The brain, the field of consciousness. We often think of the brain as the control center of the body, but in the Buddha's teaching, the brain is simply the tool of the mind. It records every experience, every habit, every thought, just as the earth records every footprint upon it. If a person lives in anger, judgment, or anxiety, their brain will grow the neural pathways linked to stress and fear. The prefrontal cortex, the center of reasoning and decision-making, gradually shrinks. On the other hand, those who live with mindfulness, compassion, and gratitude will strengthen areas of the brain associated with peace, empathy, and deep emotional regulation. Behavior is the seed, the brain is the field. Dr. Laura Boyd, a leading neuroscientist, says, behavior is the driver of neuroplastic change. This aligns perfectly with the Buddha's insight. Our actions, whether in thought, word, or deed, are the karma that shapes not only our future, but also the architecture of our brain and mind. A simple example. A person who practices piano daily strengthens the neural connections between the fingers and the motor cortex. At first, it's clumsy, but with consistent repetition, it becomes second nature, as if the music flows directly from the soul. Deep practice, planting new seeds. Imagine this. Every time you scroll social media without purpose, you're reinforcing an artificial dopamine loop, training your brain to crave fast stimuli and weakening your ability to focus deeply. Every time you judge someone, your brain reinforces networks of separation, comparison, and defensiveness, making empathy and release more difficult. Every time you procrastinate, your executive functions weaken, and the brain learns avoidance is safer than action. That becomes your default. But the solution is not to force yourself in frustration. The solution is to plant one small, meaningful behavior. Instead of mindless scrolling, each morning, open a meaningful book. Read just one page. Underline one sentence that makes you pause. When judgment arises, take 3 conscious breaths and ask, is this person suffering too, just like me? When procrastination comes, write down one task for today. Do it within the first 5 minutes. You don't need 21 days to feel a shift. One moment of mindful choice is already rewiring your brain. But if you stay consistent, your brain begins to form entirely new neural networks. Science calls this neuroplasticity. Buddhism calls it mindfulness transforming karma. Mindfulness is the daily practice of rewiring the brain. When the mind is pure, the world becomes pure. When the wild horse of the mind is tamed, it carries the cart of life toward peace. Meditation and mindfulness, not escaping the world, but living fully in it. Scientific studies have confirmed just 8 weeks of daily meditation, 20 to 30 minutes a day, can physically change the brain structure and function. Specifically, the insula, the area responsible for internal awareness and emotional connection, becomes more developed, enhancing empathy and the ability to feel joy in simple things. The amygdala, the center for fear and anger, becomes less reactive, helping you stay calm in stressful situations. The prefrontal cortex, the brain center for logic, planning, and emotional regulation, becomes more active, improving your focus, clarity, and self-control. A groundbreaking Harvard study showed that even people who had never meditated before experienced an increase in gray matter density in these key brain areas after just 8 weeks of consistent practice. This proves what the Buddha taught over 2,500 years ago: diligent inner training brings real, physical transformation, not just in the soul, but in the brain itself. In Buddhism, this journey is known as the path of sila, samadhi, panna, ethics, concentration, wisdom. Sila, ethics, living with integrity, protects the mind from inner turmoil caused by guilt and regret. When the heart is clean, the brain stops operating under chronic stress. Samadhi, meditation, the art of being present. When the mind is still, the brain shifts from reactive survival mode into awareness, the home of insight. Panna, wisdom, the natural fruit of ethics and meditation. When the heart is clean and the mind is calm, wisdom rises like the sun after a long night. It's not just intellect, it's the ability to see things clearly, to understand suffering, and the path beyond it. A practical example. Someone who lives under constant stress tends to have overactive amygdala. They may get easily irritated, overthink everything, and struggle to sleep. But when they begin meditating just 15 minutes each morning, simply observing their breath, within 2 to 3 weeks, they often report more patience, better sleep, and a remarkable shift. They no longer overreact to small things. They didn't change their personality. They rewired their nervous system from the inside out. How mindful living reshapes the brain. Even a single mindful act, like washing dishes while fully aware of washing dishes, activates the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center for self-regulation and decision-making. This activation helps quiet the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for mind wandering, overthinking, and aimless worry. And here's the beauty. You don't need to sit cross-legged in silence to be mindful. Mindfulness is the art of presence, being fully with what is, without judgment or craving for things to be different. Everyday mindfulness practices. When eating, turn your meal into a sacred ritual. Put down your phone. Look at the food. Take a deep breath. Smell the aroma. Chew slowly and notice the textures and flavors. Feel gratitude, this food is nourishing your life. When bathing, rather than letting your mind drift into emails or worries, come back to the feeling of water on your skin, the warmth on your neck, the sound of flowing water. Let every drop cleanse your mind as well as your body. When walking, notice each step. The crunch of dry leaves. The breeze brushing your shoulder. You are not rushing through life, you are living it. Your brain will register these mindful states as safe, present, loved. Over time, it will begin to prioritize neural pathways linked to calm, focus, and joy, and weaken those wired for fear, reactivity, and negativity. That is how a mindful mind reshapes the brain, moment by moment, breath by breath. What you don't do is also shaping your brain. Break old habits and rebuild yourself. Do no evil, cultivate goodness, and purify your mind. This is the teaching of all Buddhists. Dhammapada, verse 183. The unbelievable truth, inaction also shapes who you are. If you think only action changes your brain, the truth runs deeper. Inaction, avoidance, procrastination, quietly rewires your brain every day. Think of your brain like a forest. Every time you walk a certain path, whether it's through action or avoidance, you deepen that trail. Repeated avoidance is like walking the same fear-based path until it becomes a highway of hesitation. A person who skips daily exercise not only loses physical strength, but sends a signal to their motor cortex that the body doesn't need movement, weakening that region and reducing both motivation and inspiration. Someone who avoids conflict and withholds truth is underactivating brain regions like the prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex, leading to diminished capacity for honest communication and adaptive emotional response. A chronic procrastinator teaches their nervous system that avoidance is safer than action. This reinforces a procrastination circuit, turning hesitation into a reflex that bypasses conscious decision. It's not that you're weak. You've just unconsciously repeated a life pattern that made your brain default to delay instead of doing, silence instead of truth, retreat instead of progress. But here's the good news: every neural default can be reprogrammed once you become aware of where you're heading and choose a new direction. Bad habits are not harmless, they are neurological pathways. The brain is biologically economical. Its main goal is to find the fastest path to respond, to conserve energy like glucose and oxygen. That's why any repeated behavior, good or bad, becomes a neural trail. The more you travel it, the easier and faster it gets. This means, if you habitually judge others when something displeases you, your brain wires that as the default. If you often complain or feel inexplicably low, your brain builds a neural map for negative emotional states, making you prone to fatigue and gloom. Have you ever woken up feeling unmotivated for no clear reason? Carried a cloud of melancholy throughout your day? Felt like a mental fog was dragging you down? These aren't just random moods. They are the product of negative neural paths you've unconsciously constructed and reinforced. Your brain is following a familiar trail, even if that trail leads to suffering. Reflective practice. Is there a negative habit you keep repeating simply because it's familiar? Is there a good habit you keep postponing because you don't have the energy? Is there a recurring emotional reaction that drains you, but you don't know how to escape it? Write them down with pen and paper. Writing gives form to what you're nourishing in your brain. Only through recognition can change begin. As the Buddha taught, by oneself is evil done, by oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil avoided, by oneself is purified. Purity and impurity depend on oneself, no one can purify another. Break old paths, one step at a time. The brain doesn't change through force. It rewires through repetition, with awareness, purpose, and compassion. Imagine each negative habit as a wild overgrown trail you've unconsciously walked thousands of times. You don't need to bulldoze the whole forest overnight. You simply stop walking that path, and begin clearing a new one, one small step at a time. Even a drop of water can wear away stone. A single mindful act, done repeatedly, can change your destiny. What matters is not the size of the change, but its consistency. Your brain doesn't need heroic acts, it needs clear and steady signals to form new neural networks. Practical examples. You tend to self-blame when you make mistakes. Try writing down one small lesson in a notebook. Next time, I'll. This builds a neural link to learning, instead of guilt. You feel stuck and unmotivated. Instead of staying in bed, open a window, go for a 5-minute walk in morning sunlight. Light and motion awaken dopamine, switching you into action mode. You stress eat when feeling down. Rather than resisting, drink a glass of water and write down how you actually feel. This builds a new response pattern for old emotions. Try this practice. Choose one draining habit that keeps repeating. Write down when, where, and what triggers it. Choose one positive replacement, small but beneficial. Commit to doing it for 3 days in a row, even if it's just 1 minute each time. After each day, reflect, what did I do differently today? No change is meaningless, if done with mindfulness. You are training your brain, one breath, one choice at a time. The mind is like soil, it will grow whatever is planted. If you don't sow good seeds, weeds will take over. Each person is a unique neural forest. Learn in your own way. Each being has their own karma, just as no two footprints are ever the same. Anguttara Nikaya. No one learns the same way, and that's nature's gift. One of the greatest misconceptions in education and personal growth is the belief that there's only one correct way to learn. But the truth is, each brain is a unique universe. No two people share the same cognitive journey, nor do they have identical neural maps. Modern neuroscience calls this neurodiversity, the natural variety in how brains function. It's not a flaw to be fixed, but a reality to be honored and harnessed. Neurodiversity means that every person processes information, responds to stimuli, retains memories, expresses emotions, and finds motivation in ways that are uniquely their own. One person may learn best by listening, another only by doing. Some need long periods of reflection, others a quiet space. Some thrive in solo study, others blossom in group settings. These differences aren't obstacles, they are your personal neurological blueprint. Just as no two trees in a forest grow in the exact same direction, we cannot expect everyone in a classroom or in life to learn, change, or react in the same way. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. Albert Einstein. What you need is not to copy someone else's method, but to discover the learning style that suits you best, and commit to it with steady effort and self-compassion. Learning slowly doesn't mean you're behind, learning differently doesn't mean you're wrong. You may need more time to learn a new language, but you might experience music with incredible depth. You may not enjoy books, but you absorb instantly through hands-on experience. You may not memorize quickly, but once you understand something deeply, it stays with you for life. This is not a flaw. This is your brain's natural map. Every person is born with a unique filter through which they engage with the world. Some absorb knowledge through words, others through rhythm, images, or touch. Some understand by listening, others only when they physically interact with a subject. The fact that you're different doesn't make you less intelligent, it just means you're walking a different path. Learning slowly isn't regression. It might be depth, patience, and layered integration. Learning differently isn't wrong. It could be a sign of originality, you're pioneering a new trail. In the forest, some trees bloom after one season, others take 7 years just to bud. Both are perfectly aligned with their own nature. Likewise, you're not here to race, you're here to bloom on the timeline of your own consciousness. The wise do not strive to be like others, they strive to understand themselves. The Buddha taught, knowing yourself is the first wisdom. In Buddhism, awakening doesn't come from mimicking the teacher or following a rigid formula. It comes from clearly knowing your own body, speech, and mind, being aware of what you're thinking, saying, and doing in each living moment. To conquer 1,000 armies is nothing compared to conquering yourself. Self-mastery is the greatest victory. Dhammapada, verse 103. A person prone to anger, if unaware of the root of their rage, will find that all their meditation becomes a mask. What they need is patience, not just tolerance, but compassion toward their own anger. A person full of doubt, if unable to recognize their own inner insecurity, will distort every piece of wisdom they receive. What they need is trust, faith in the Dharma, in wise teachers, and in their own potential for awakening. A person who's bright and sharp, but prone to judgment and pride, needs humility. Not to belittle themselves, but to keep an open mind, like an empty cup ready to receive new water. Likewise, the Buddha never offered a one-size-fits-all path. He gave teachings like medicine for illness. Those with excess heat received cooling practices, those with coldness received warming ones. Each person must recognize their own tendencies, karma, and neurological makeup to choose the right path for learning and growth. Your brain is the soil, but your mind is the gardener. Every seed needs its own light, water, and conditions to grow. Don't compare the peach tree with the bamboo. Nurture your seed with love, patience, and wisdom. Practice, design your own learning path. Reflect. What kind of content have you always learned the fastest? Sound? Visual? Hands-on? Where do you usually get stuck when learning something new? Overwhelm? Boredom? Distraction? When do you learn best? Early morning? Late night? In silence or while moving? Now, create a simple learning or training plan based on what feels natural to you. It doesn't have to be ambitious, it just has to be authentic. If you learn best through images, don't force yourself to only read text. If you get easily distracted, break learning time into short bursts with micro breaks. If you often feel discouraged, start with something that feels enjoyable to regain momentum. Don't learn just because others do it that way. Learn in a way that makes your inner being bloom. Because learning in harmony with your true nature is one of the deepest forms of healing. You are not just learning a skill. You are learning how to learn yourself. And when you understand how you learn, you understand how you live. For learning and living are one. A practitioner does not walk faster than others. They simply know the path they are on is true to their heart. What kind of brain are you creating? A wake-up call toward healing. All phenomena are created by the mind. If the mind is pure, happiness will follow like a shadow that never leaves. Dhammapada. Every moment is a chance to rewrite yourself. Neuroscience calls it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape and rewire itself through experience. Buddhism calls it karma, the ceaseless accumulation of thoughts, words, and actions that shape the future. Though expressed in different languages, both point to the same truth. Every single thing you do, no matter how small, is silently rewiring your brain and your karma. Each time you think negatively, you're training your brain to default to negativity. Each time you choose forgiveness, you're training your brain to open its heart. Every look, every word, every choice, conscious or unconscious, is carving a subtle imprint onto your inner map of perception. Actions form habits. Habits shape character. Character creates destiny. A Western view that resonates deeply with Buddhist teachings. So the question is no longer, am I changing? But rather, in what direction am I changing? What patterns am I reinforcing each day? What kind of brain, what kind of human being am I creating for tomorrow? Are you training yourself to be a person quick to anger or one who cultivates patience? Someone who reacts unconsciously or someone who pauses and observes? A person constantly seeking external validation or one brave enough to listen to their inner truth? A person ruled by fear or one guided by core values? Every moment holds the power to reshape you, like an artist sculpting your own soul through each small act. And if you feel like you've been on the wrong path for years, don't despair. One shift today is enough to begin a new chapter. You can choose to become someone who listens within instead of reacting outward. Someone who returns home to themselves rather than chasing meaning in the world. Awaken in daily life, heal from within. You don't need to wait for heartbreak, illness, or loss to begin healing. Every single day is a chance to gently realign your course. Transformation doesn't begin with drama, it begins with conscious repetition of small choices. Imagine that each day, you're holding a pen. Each choice you make is a brushstroke on the canvas of your brain and your life. When you choose forgiveness over resentment, you calm your amygdala and strengthen areas like the insula and anterior cingulate cortex, linked to empathy and compassion. Your mind softens, and your brain begins to learn love over defense. When you sit quietly for just 10 minutes each morning, even if the session isn't perfect, you increase gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's center for emotional regulation, decision-making, and clarity. You're rebuilding the command center of your life. When you take action instead of procrastinating, even if it's as small as tidying your desk, writing a to-do, or stepping outside for fresh air, you activate your dopaminergic system, sparking motivation, self-trust, and a sense of agency. When you say thank you instead of complaining, your brain shifts toward regions that perceive joy. You start seeing more beauty, not because the world changed, but because your brain did. Healing doesn't come from grand acts, it comes from the courage to make a small difference, again and again. Healing isn't somewhere far away. It's right here, in the choices you make this very moment. You don't have to be perfect. You only need to be awake and kind to yourself. Learning in alignment with your nature, the deepest healing journey. You always have the power to choose again. You can always begin anew, starting from this very moment. Take a moment to reflect. What have you learned the fastest in life? What did those experiences have in common? Was it sound, visuals, or hands-on practice? When learning something new, where do you usually get stuck? Overwhelm, boredom, distraction? When do you learn best? Early morning, late at night, in silence, while moving? Now, write out a learning or growth plan that feels natural to you. It doesn't have to be grand, it just needs to be honest. If you learn best through visuals, use diagrams, videos, and charts. If you're easily distracted, break your sessions into shorter chunks with mindful breaks. If you often feel unmotivated, begin with something small and pleasant to reignite momentum. Don't learn just because others do it that way. Learn in a way that makes your soul bloom. You are not just learning a skill. You are learning how to understand yourself. And that is one of the most profound paths of healing. And when you discover how to learn in alignment with your nature, you'll also discover how to live in alignment with your truth. Because in the end, learning and living are one and the same. A true seeker doesn't rush ahead of others. They simply walk the path that resonates with their heart. And if this journey still holds many turns, remember, you don't need to know every path. You only need to be aware of each step you take. You don't need to be perfect to begin. You only need to begin with honesty. Each time you pause and listen deeply to yourself, you are healing your brain, your soul, and your life. We don't learn to become someone else. We learn to return to ourselves, clear, awakened, and free. You've just walked a journey that's not only about knowledge, but about returning home to yourself. So remember, you don't need to be perfect to start. You only need to start with awareness and truth. If something in this video touched your heart, please share it with someone you love. Sometimes, a single insight at the right moment can change the entire direction of a life. And if you'd like to walk this path with me, of healing, awakening, and learning in alignment with your brain's true nature, don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, so the next gift arrives just when you need it most. See you in the next video, where your mind is no longer a limit, but a doorway to the real you.